How do you know if you are a good leader? You see, we ask ourselves our question. We're like, what do I really have leadership potential? Are these qualities different in me? Do I really have what it takes? Well, let's look at the life of King Saul in one of the bright spots, one of the only spots where he actually got something right. You see, God didn't ordain him as king for no reason. Saul had some really good potential. He had some really good attributes that God wanted to bring out and to make him king over Israel. So if he would have followed, he would have been a fantastic king if he'd have followed God. You see, when Nahash the Ammonite came up against the men of Jabesh Gilead, he brought these nasty men and he besieged the city and he was going bent on crushing it. And the men of Jabesh Gilead are like, hey, covenant of peace, man, covenant of peace. We'll come out and we'll serve you. And he's like, only if I could tear out your right eye. They're like, oh, I don't know what they did to reason with him, but they said, let us send for help. Let's see if somebody will save us. Nahash was like, okay, send out your emissaries. Go ahead and send out, and you see if somebody can save you from me. And Nahash must have been a really intimidating guy, because when the news of this hit Israel, they were weeping and crying and mourning. The average man was like, woe is me. This evil has come upon us. There's nothing we can do about it. We are now having to suffer, and we're having to acquiesce, and we're having to back off. But notice what happened to Saul. He wasn't King Saul yet. He was king, but he hadn't been crowned king yet, but he was King Saul. But notice how Saul acted when he heard the news about his fellow brothers weeping and mourning and crying. It says the Spirit of God came upon him, and he became furious, and he hacks up his oxen, and he sends them out throughout the tribes of Israel. And he says, if you don't come here, I'm going to hack up your oxen. We are going to band together, and we're going to teach this Nahash a lesson, and we're going to chop him in pieces. You see, the Spirit of God can emote anger in us. It is so funny that men can read the scriptures and want to stay only in the New Testament and just want to focus on love and joy and peace and not read the entirety of scripture to capture the total masculinity and power that God created in men to lead. And these are attributes that flow out of the Godhead. This being the case, you have to ask yourself the question, when you hear bad news, when you hear unrighteous news, when you hear ungodly news, does it make you want to weep and mourn and cry and stay in bed? Or does it make you furious? And if you can answer that question, you'll know if you're a good leader or not.